My entire goal for the past week was to prepare both of my project cars for this impending snowstorm. Sometimes plans don't exactly go the way you want them to. One of my cars generously had its own ideas for how I should spend my time this week, and those plans completely contradicted what I wanted to accomplish. So we had to pivot a bit. Last week, we replaced the head unit in the S4. That works great. We can now pick a song and listen to whatever we like. Only problem is, it sounds like absolute garbage because all of my speakers are blown. We are eventually going to replace all the speakers in the car. Specifically for today, what I want to do is replace the 2-door speakers on the front doors that are the worst out of all of the speakers in the car. Then we'll be able to tell which issues we still have in the remaining speakers and tackle them one by one. We've got our work cut out for us this weekend getting both of these cars ready for winter. Now, it may seem counterintuitive to start by fixing crunchy speakers, but if I'm going to be driving this car, I can't think of anything worse than having to listen to crunchy audio. So this is much more of an upgrade than you might first think. Take a listen to this to see just how bad the audio was before.
This is the Project TT225, and over the course of the past few weeks, I've been on a...
It is comically bad, so I'm really hoping that just these 2 speakers initially are going to make a big difference. Pretty much can't stand listening to that crunchy of audio. A little bit of crunch is fine, but that is pretty intolerable.
To fix the crunch, we're replacing the 2 primary speakers on the front 2 doors. And they are quite easy to get to by removing the door card, which by now we've done way too many times. They also happen to be really easy to remove once you get the door card off. There are 3 screws and 2 leads plugging into the speaker. Once the speaker's out, it's time to tackle the interesting challenge of mounting these new speakers. The replacement Kenwood speakers I ordered are the same size. However, they are not built to fit into the stock bracket. The stock bracket fits perfectly into the door though, so I would like to reuse this if possible. I played around with this for a while and my decision landed on drilling new holes to mount the speaker into the stock ring. That way mounting it to the door itself would be perfect, and so long as I got it snugly attached to the ring, there wouldn't be any sort of a rattle. Plus, the stock ring is made out of plastic, so drilling holes and setting screws is very easy. And it's behind the door card, so a few extra screws aren't ever going to really be seen. I have no doubt that someone online makes a specific bracket to get these speakers to mount flush to the stock door, but since this is never seen, I really don't know if that's a great use of money when you can just modify the existing ones and retrofit the speaker so it fits perfectly. Doing it this way, I was even able to reuse the rubber sound deadening to go around the speaker so that there are really no rattles whatsoever. The only downside is every time you remove the door card and look at the speakers, you're going to see the extra screws you added, though that's not really a huge downside in my mind. Wiring most aftermarket speakers like this is incredibly simple since the harness has 2 plugs. You've got your ground and you've got your power wire, and they fit into exactly where you would expect them to on the new speaker, making this literally a plug-and-play install. I also went ahead and cut off the overhang of the screws I added once I knew everything was fitting properly. Once both of these speakers were upgraded, I reinstalled the door cards to see if we made any sort of an improvement.
Just finished putting those speakers in. I think we should figure out if there's others that I need to get ordered up. I just wanted to do as much as we can with the time being, and I knew those ones were the worst in the car. So let's see if it's any better.
This is the Project TT225, and over the course of the past few weeks, I've been on a quest to upgrade almost every aspect of this car's suspension.
That is a major upgrade over what it was before. I'm going to do a little more research on how to fix the rest of the system, but I think that was the main issue so far. So now it's a little less crunchy, and I'm more than happy that we did that. We're prepping the S4 for winter today, and part of that means getting the tank of E85 ran down enough so that we can switch back to pump gas. Where I live, there is one gas station that has E85 at the pump, and it happens to be downtown, which is quite a ways away from where I live. It's supposed to snow here in the next week or so, and I really can't think of anything less fun than having to drive all the way downtown when I need a tank of gas in this car. The first step to changing octanes is to get the gas pretty much as low as we can. Pretty simple process. Gas is sufficiently low, so now is a good time to actually check that we plugged the laptop in before we came here. Got the tune switched, we're ready to fill up, and if you're wondering, that was an olive tree in the passenger seat.
For cars with multiple octane tunes, always swap the tune before putting the new octane in on the off chance swapping tunes doesn't work.
Ready to start the car now. Switching tunes is really easy. This will be nice because we'll actually be able to get gas anywhere in town rather than just one place in town. Can't tell a difference other than the exhaust probably won't smell like popcorn anymore.
Now that the car is set to run well for the winter, we need to prep it for the elements. It snows quite a bit where I live, so there's a few things we need to go buy. I purchased this car towards the end of last winter, so I never had to scrape it. Consequently, we're going to need to buy one of these as well as wiper fluid. I've also ordered some new snow tires for the car, though those won't get here in today's episode, unfortunately. Something that has always bothered me about this car is that it came with universal weather mats. Don't get me wrong, I love weatherproof weather mats, however these do not fit the car whatsoever. Not only are these an eyesore, but they're kind of a safety hazard because when you rest your feet on them, they bunch up underneath the clutch, not allowing you to press it down fully. So it's time for these to go. As much as I would like to buy the OEM B5S4 weatherproof floor mats, those cost almost $500 because they're so rare, and I can't justify spending that much for floor mats. So for the time being, fitted black carpets will work wonders for improving the interior. I am a huge fan of the way fitted carpets look versus universal floor mats. I think they are intentional and they fit the car, which makes sense since, well, they're fitted. Other than waiting on the snow tires, the S4 is pretty much as prepped for winter as I can get it today. I can't wait to see how this car does. Now, if you saw the title, you might be wondering why things haven't gone wrong yet. Aren't B5s supposed to be unreliable? Well, mine's actually been more reliable than my other car, funny enough. But I don't want to jinx things. This is when this weekend took a complete turn for the worst. Almost every single thing that could have went wrong when prepping the TT for winter did. And then things not even related to prepping to winter happen. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Where does this all start? Let's check on that mysteriously disappearing coolant that we've been dealing with the past few weeks. If you missed that episode, this car lost quite a bit of coolant on top of a mountain. We've been checking for leaks daily, and so far it looks like we've been okay. There are no immediate puddles under the car, but I do think there may be a really slight leak somewhere in the system. I checked the auxiliary water pump based on a lot of your suggestions, and unfortunately, there was no leak there. So I guess we'll just have to keep looking. Thankfully, it is so slow that it's not a huge concern right now. I'm talking maybe the tank goes down by a millimeter every 2 weeks. It's not the biggest concern at the moment. The biggest concern is swapping over to my winter wheels and tires so I'm ready for the impending snowstorm. These are what I ran last year in the snow, and the TT had absolutely zero problem getting around. And honestly, it's probably the best car I've ever driven in the snow, so I'm excited to drive it again. I'm personally of the vocation that you should always get snow tires for your cars. I would much rather have a tire designed specifically for the condition I'm in, i.e. winter, rather than one designed for the average condition, wet or dry. Thankfully for this car, that's just a quick swap away. Could it really be that simple though? things. We have a problem. Let me tell you how I got these snow tires and the issue we're running into. These snow tires originally came on my B6 A4 Avant that I had before I bought the TT, and they were on the wheels that are actually on the S4 right now. Those guys. Well, these are 235/45 R17s, and last year they fit perfectly on the TT on the Fat 5s because I was on stock suspension. I am on coilovers now, and for some reason, now they no longer fit the car. They touch the edge of the coilover themselves. So here's my dilemma. We either need to get spacers now and run these wheels with these snow tires on the TT, or we get new snow tires for the TT and move these snow tires to the S4 back on the original wheels that they came on. I've got some thinking to do. Either way, this is a little irritating because it's about to snow this week. Thinking about it a little more, I made a decision. Really makes no sense to pay money to have these tires switched from rim to rim to rim when I really wanted spacers for this car anyways. I had to completely shift what my goals were for the weekend, and I would have to acknowledge the fact that the TT would also not have snow wheels ready for winter, which was a little bit of a bummer. The car's still gonna work just fine in the winter, but I really do like having snow tires. I guess worse things have definitely happened than having an excuse to put spacers on your car and make your fitment look better. I used a straight piece of wood to measure the widest part of the tire with the wheel well itself to see how much clearance I would have and what size spacer I needed to order. They won't get here till after the storm though, so we'll have to change our tires then. Looks like we have a little under an inch to work with in the rear and half an inch in the front for it to be flush. I want this car to handle as good as it possibly can, and that means I want a square setup. So I'm gonna base the maximum we can go off of the front tires, and the rear will just not be completely flush, and that's intentional because I want the square setup. I think it'll be more beneficial in the long run. My original plans for the rest of the day were to test fit and install whatever's in this insanely large box. Unfortunately, as I was driving the TT back from a quick errand, we had to shift gears yet again. So let me know your guess as to what this is in the comments. We are in gear. Generally, when I drive a stick shift car, I like to be able to tell what gear I'm in, and something definitely went wrong. We replaced the end links recently, so I know it's nothing on the transmission side, which means we now have to diagnose which bushing went bad in the shift column inside the car. So my afternoon was now spent taking a detour and taking apart my center console. If you've been with the channel for quite a while, you'll remember that last winter I replaced all the bushings underneath here in this car. So in other words, something had to have went wrong with the new Diesel Geek bushings that we installed last winter. Thankfully, taking apart the interior was really quick this time since I've done it all before. Sure enough, as soon as I took apart the center console, I could immediately see which bushing was causing us the issue. Once this plastic collar was removed, you can really see what the issue was. The Diesel Geek bushing that fell off was what they called their first gear getter. It effectively translates the left and right movement of your shifter. As you can see here, since it fell off, we were having way more play before actually moving the shifter cable itself. In other words, reverse, first, fifth, and sixth were almost impossible to get to because we literally couldn't move the shifter enough to move the shift cable. I'm really not sure how this popped off, but thankfully it's really easy to pop it back into place. If it pops off again, I'm gonna have to come up with an alternative or a long-term fix. Hopefully this was just a one-time fluke. While I was in here, I decided to check my front-to-back and side-to-side play on my shifter cables themselves. There are access holes on the shift column that let you feel if those bushings are intact. Both of mine were fine, so I went through the gears to make sure that I was set to reassemble most of the interior. I say most because there's one more thing I want to do while I'm in here. Anytime you mess with shifter cable bushings, end links, or pretty much anything in that entire system, you're going to want to do a shifter cable reset. We covered this a few episodes ago if you want to learn more when we install the billet end links. Now that the shifter cable was aligned, we were good to go. Man, two completely different issues for the TT in the same weekend. Fingers crossed that's the last issue we run into for a while. So when I was realigning the shifter, I found this hose that wasn't connected to anything in the engine bay. Who knows how long it's been like that, but thankfully it's an easy fix since the hose that was plugged in is sitting right next to it. It's part of that finicky secondary air injection system that we've had issues with in the past. I'm waiting on a kit to replace the whole thing. So eventually, we won't have to worry about this anymore, but for the time being, we can play with the brittle plastic. Aw, really? Here we go again, I guess.
About 3 days of driving later, it looks like that first gear getter Diesel Geek bushing popped off again. At this point, I'm just going to try to put it on without taking the interior apart because I'd like to drive a 6-speed car rather than a 5-speed car. It's failed enough that I would consider it to be failing at the moment. Maybe I installed it wrong or something like that, but it looks exactly like the pictures online. So we're just going to hopefully try to find either a replacement version of the same thing or an alternative, but I'll figure out something going forward because it's a tad annoying to have to reinsert the bushing every 3 days of driving. I'd rather not do that.
Turns out if you're willing to cut up your hands, you can get this bushing on without removing the center console. Still really frustrating to have to do this every few days since it keeps failing though. I reached out to Diesel Geek with the problems and they're gonna send me a replacement first gear getter. They are awesome dudes to work with and I appreciate them sending me out another one to see if it's the problem.
It's looking like we did not beat the snow.
I mean, it totally sucks that the TT doesn't have its snow tires on, and it spins its tires really easily, and it chucks itself around a corner and drifts pretty much wherever you point it. It's really just the worst, you know? For real though, the TT's a blast in the snow. It is perfectly controllable and it loses grip when you want it to, which is ideal for a winter car. To be honest, even though it's a small sports car, it is the best car I've ever driven in winter. So if you're on the fence about putting it away for storage or driving it, I say drive it. You're not gonna regret it. Even with this car being lowered on coilovers, it is still more than capable in the snow, and honestly, I think it'd be very hard to get stuck. It is, however, now low enough that those chunks of ice that sit in people's wheel wells that fall off because they don't break them off in a parking lot hit the car. Yeah. Final issue this week, I promise. Our front splitter that we custom made was a casualty to the first day of snow. Wheel well ice fell off the car in front of me and it just smashed into the splitter. Unfortunately, it was cold enough that this was brittle and it just shattered. Not much I can really do about that other than rebuild it and make it better in the future. Still a little annoying though, since it'd be hard to replicate something that was one of one. Such is life. In my opinion, cars are really easy to personify. They are relatable and have human qualities in a way. Some a lot more than others. I think the more imperfect a car is, the more relatable it is because humans aren't perfect. So in other words, German cars are really relatable because of the issues they have. Just spitballing though. If I could characterize the TT by one emotion, it would be moody. When this car is good, it is really, really good. It can be reliable, it can be fast, it can be fun, it can handle great, but it all depends on how the car feels and how it wants to be at that specific moment. It can also give you issue after issue after issue, which is exactly what happened this past week. Thankfully, at the end of the day, fixing those issues and improving the car is what makes having a project car itself fun. So I will happily keep doing it. I've got a lot of stuff in the works for both of these cars, and by the end of winter, with all the work I have planned, they will be very different and much improved. I hope you're as excited as I am. I want to say thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing for more. It really does help my channel out, and the support genuinely means a lot to me. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch my video. I will see you guys in the next episode. I hope you have a wonderful day.